shutdown is over. A deal is reached on day 35 to end the partial shutdown. We'll have the details and take a look at what happens next. And Trump ally Roger Stone is out of bail after his early morning arrest by the FBI. Stone charged with witness tampering, obstruction of justice, and lying to Congress. And Dr. Ruth, well, she's well known for her straight talk on sex, but there is a lot more to her story. We'll give you a preview of a soon-to-be-released documentary.
This is Clearcut Plus with Michelle Makori.
Welcome, everyone. Thank you for watching. On day 35, the shutdown ends. Republicans and Democrats crafting a deal to fully reopen the government for the next 3 weeks. The Senate and the House acting quickly to approve the deal, and it's now on its way to President Trump's desk. The president is expected to sign it. Kenneth Moten reports from Washington.
Day 35 of the partial government shutdown, an end to the stalemate between the Democrats and President Trump.
We have reached a deal to end the shutdown and reopen the federal government.
The tentative deal, 3 weeks of funding. The president backing down from his $5.7 billion demand for a southern border wall, while a bipartisan group of lawmakers negotiates a broader border security agreement.
They will put together a homeland security package for me to shortly sign into law.
It's sad, though, that it's taken this long to come to an obvious conclusion.
Democratic leaders are still firmly against wall funding, but promising to operate in good faith.
Hopefully, it means a lesson learned. Shutting down the government over a policy difference is self-defeating.
800,000 federal workers missing paychecks, lining up at food banks, struggling to pay the bills. This was the scene today at several major airports, a ground stop at LaGuardia Airport in New York, flight delays in Philadelphia, D.C., and Florida due to absent air traffic controllers. At the IRS, more than half of the 26,000 workers recalled for the tax season didn't show up to work. This Coast Guard wife inside a food pantry in Connecticut, emotional as she watched the president's announcement.
I want to thank all of the incredible federal workers and their amazing families who have shown such extraordinary devotion in the face of this recent hardship.
And that was Kenneth Moten reporting there. All right, joining me to discuss is Tom Borelli. He is a contributor to the Conservative Review and also to America's Voice. And from Washington, D.C., David Morey. David is a Democratic strategist and the co-author of the book, The Leadership Campaign. Gentlemen, thank you for being with us. Tom, let's start.
Michelle.
Hi, David. Good to have you. Tom, let's start with you. Do you see this move to reopen the government as the president caving in?
No, actually, I don't. I see this really as, using a football analogy, we're now in overtime to really 3 weeks to try to figure out, negotiate a real deal. And, you know, I think President Trump has taken the high road. He agreed not to give a State of the Union address per Nancy Pelosi's request. And the Democrats always said they would negotiate only after the government was open. So now we're here. But now it's up to the Democrats really to step up to the plate and really start to negotiate. And the backdrop of all this is there are polls that say that, you know, the American people are really concerned about border security and illegal immigration. Rasmussen has a poll where 66% of the people think illegal immigration is a serious issue. And Gallup has a poll putting border security is one of the top 2 issues. So really now the pressure's on the Democrats actually to do something because the people are worried about the border.
Tom, I hear all of those points, but do you think this puts the president in a weaker negotiating position?
We'll see, because he still said he's willing to take the next step, either shut down the government again or do the emergency action, which I really hope he doesn't have to do. But he still has those opportunities. But at the end of the day, it's about border security, and that's for all Americans.
And, David, you could argue that the Democrats may see this as a win, but the government shutdown wasn't helping either party. It wasn't looking good for the Democrats. Nancy Pelosi was coming across, arguably, as very obstinate. It wasn't looking good for the Republicans. And to Tom's point, it is time for the Democrats to now come up with some kind of compromise. They didn't offer any kind of counter-offers to the last 3 offers put forward by Republicans. So what do you see the Democrats coming with?
Well, I don't think anyone wins when the government shut down, costing $1 billion a week and a lot of pain a lot of hurt to our growth. I'm not sure Donald Trump took the high road here, Michelle, as Tom was arguing. I'm not sure I would describe it that way. We could have done on December 22nd what we just did today. It was a retreat, but it was a good retreat for the president because now we can start over. He was getting killed politically. 57% of some respondents were saying they'd never vote for him. I disagree with Tom's quote on some of the statistics. You know, only a very small fraction of American people say they really support a wall. They do support stronger border security. That doesn't necessarily mean it all comes down to a wall that would, you know, please Donald Trump's base. So where do we go now? Both parties are going to have to step up. You know, this is not, remember, as much heat as Donald Trump took politically here, it's very easy for both parties to be blamed for this. They're going to have to step up, rise above partisanship, and start building solutions that are smarter and not just symbolic politically for either of their bases.
All right, so David, sticking with you, let's talk about what these solutions can be. We won't get into the fight over whose poll is more accurate, but there has been a big need for immigration reform in the country. Tougher border security is something that Democrats have supported in the past, including some form of a physical barrier. But now some of the Democrats, Nancy Pelosi, have called a wall immoral. So has she backed herself into a corner with that one? What can the Democrats come up with that is indeed a compromise on that end?
Michelle, she's backed herself into a smaller corner than Donald Trump. Ann Coulter is a little angry at Donald Trump tonight. Nancy Pelosi has a little more control over her base. But no, a wall isn't immoral. I mean, especially a smart barrier is not immoral. You know, I was a special advisor to Department of Homeland Security. We have to do a whole bunch of things that I'm hoping these joint committees can get to and rise above. Let's get some smarter solutions, not just politicized solutions, using drones, technologies, staffing up the port of entry, which is where a lot of these, most of the illegals and the illicit drugs happen, revising our visa stay issue because that's where a lot of the problems happen, and really creating smarter solutions, better manpower, and some of it's going to involve smarter barriers. But, you know, the problem is if Donald Trump's going to want to sort of claim he did the wall for his base, that's going to alienate the Democrats. So we're going to have to sort of let these experts take the dialogue.
You don't believe they'll give in on some kind of physical barrier?
I think they'd be open to a physical barrier. We're only talking about 700 miles at this point. And, you know, a physical barrier doesn't necessarily have to mean a wall, Michelle.
Okay. All right. Tom, in terms of the Republicans, Ann Coulter's probably not happy. Right. I don't know to what extent she represents the Republican base. But what do you see the Republicans agreeing on? Is it some kind of deal regarding DACA, or does that amount to amnesty for illegals and just encourages more illegal immigration? Where's the gift from Republicans?
We're not sure yet, and that's what we're going to find out in the next 3 weeks. You know, President Trump has signaled he's willing to do something on DACA. We're not exactly sure what it will be. My concern is let's not make this thing too big of a Christmas tree. Otherwise, it may fall apart with too many, you know, bells and whistles on it. Let's really focus on border security. And to David's point, you know, barriers make sense. Drones make sense. More Border Patrol agents make sense. There's a lot of things going on. And while a lot of drugs do come across through the ports of entry, Border Security just found seized 700 pounds of cocaine between the border ports of entry.
Yeah.
So a lot of drugs do come through that way, and I think it's important to get a comprehensive solution.
And Tom, the president, to be clear, was asking for around 234 miles of a walled-off area in the most problematic areas. Can he accept any kind of deal that doesn't give him that much?
I'm not sure he can, actually, because not only it's really his responsibility, security of the American people, and that's what he's going to be doing. And when the State of the Union does come, we will see a number of these angel families have lost, you know, lost lives of family members, and we're also going to see, you know, a lot of people like that who have suffered. So again, I think President Trump's going to have a way to explain the importance of this to the American people.
And to be clear, he does still have the national emergency option if after 3 weeks there is no kind of compromise. Tom, David, stick around. We want to talk to you after the break, including talking about one of America's most colorful political personalities, Roger Stone, arrested in a dramatic way for a guy charged with lying to Congress. This is Clearcut Plus. Welcome back. I'm Michelle Makori. Trump ally and longtime political strategist Roger Stone is back home tonight. He's free on $250,000 bail, and after being arrested and charged with 7 counts of lying to Congress, obstructing an investigation, and witness tampering. Now, Stone appeared none the worse for wear at a news conference following his very dramatically staged arrest by fully armed FBI agents with guns drawn at just before 6 this morning. Stone called the charges false and is vowing to fight them.
I will plead not guilty to these charges. I believe this is a politically motivated investigation. I am troubled by the political motivations of the prosecutors. And as I have said previously, there is no circumstance whatsoever under which I will bear false witness against the president, nor will I make up lies to ease the pressure on myself.
All right, joining me now is Tom Borelli. He's a contributor to the Conservative Review, also to America's Voice, and we're also back with David Morey from Washington, D.C. David is a Democratic strategist and the co-author of the book, The Leadership Campaign. David, just to make this very, very, very clear, the indictment today does not allege Russian collusion by Roger Stone or anyone else in the Trump campaign. It focuses on alleged false statement that Stone made to Congress. As a result of this investigation, it's another process crime. Had there been no investigation, there would be no crime in this instance. What does it tell you about where Mueller is regarding the investigation?
It tells me that Mueller's holding all the cards, and we almost have to wait. He's the pivot point where we'll really know what's going on here. It does, Michelle, you're right what you said. It alludes, though, to a July meeting where instructions were given. And, you know, there's some allusion there that is very cryptic. The way I think of this very simply is there's no evidence we've seen that the president himself colluded, obstructed, you know, in terms of hard evidence. He's made some public statements that may be problematic legally. There is an awful lot of evidence. There's no evidence, I'd say, that there's just a witch hunt with no smoke, with no fire, nothing, right? What we have now is an awful lot of smoke and a lot of evidence that the campaign had some kind of, that people in the campaign, we're up to 6 people now, had some kind of indirect issues that they shouldn't have been dealing with in terms of the Russian WikiLeaks triangle, if you will. And we're going to have to see what Mueller has here and see how this plays out. It's not a great day for the White House in terms of what this represents, but we really got to wait till Mueller, I think, issues his report, gets further along here.
I completely agree. We can't make any real judgments until we get the report. But, Tom, what's your read on this so far?
Well, I actually agree with David. We really don't know really what's happening, although we do have to take a step back. As a citizen, I'm really concerned about this heavy-handed approach where the FBI conducts a raid, a SWAT raid of a 66-year-old man. They did the same thing to Paul Manafort. I'd be upset that happened to you or to David or to anybody else. I see this as really strong-arm government, and I think that's really scary that every American should really be concerned about. In terms of the investigation, we'll see, but to your point before in the last segment, I mean, look, there's no Russia collusion. There may be a lot of smoke, but there's no real fire yet. And we spent, what, $25 million really for a lot of news. And by the way, speaking of news, how did CNN know this raid was going to happen? Again, we have somebody within the Mueller team or in the FBI who's got their finger on the scale. And I don't think that really works well for justice.
Well, David, a lot of us were asking that question. How did CNN and the other media know to be there at the time? Not sure who tipped them off, but you can speculate on that. But what do you make of Tom's point that this was really rather heavy-handed? I mean, was that necessary? All those, 17 FBI agents, I believe, armed, lights, cars, trucks, was it necessary?
I don't know. We'll find out. I mean, they did the same, as Tom mentioned, with Paul Manafort, and it turns out Mueller's now found and determined, we'll see how this plays out, that he was tinkering with witnesses and perjuring himself even when he was getting immunity. So the question was, you know, would he be burning papers and flushing things down the toilet? With Roger Stone, I just don't know. I don't think this was a call by Mueller in terms of the FBI raid. This would have been a law enforcement call. I would just say one more thing on the investigation. We have 37 people now that have been indicted, pled guilty. 6 key people around the president, 199 charges, 3 corporations. There's an awful lot happening.
And David, as I stressed in the first hour of the show, none of those have to do with Russian collusion. I broke it down. Absolutely none of them, except the ones related to the Russians. None of the Americans have anything to do with collusion so far. I do want to stress that CNN, so far. So, but we can't use that as an indication. I do want to stress, though, that CNN claims that they were looking at legal paperwork, and that's how they knew to be there. All right, David, thank you so much. David Morey, Tom Borelli, always great to have both of you on the show. Appreciate it.